and with you, Stephen. Before I begin, I feel compelled to say that this is meant to be a hopeful sermon. It is just going to take us a while to get to the hope. The thesis of this sermon is simple. It is that if we are going to be successful in working for social justice, we are going to have to get out of denial and face the deceitfulness and outright lies that seem to be pervasive in our American society. It is a lie that makes us miserable. It is a lie that fills our hearts with hate and vengefulness. It is a lie, both little, big and little, that produce most of the terrible sufferings of humanity. The death camps of the Nazis, the million killed by US action in Vietnam, the hundreds of thousands of refugees having fled the US-initiated war in Iraq, kids in cages and for-profit prisons. It is the lie that threatens this country and civilization itself. It is a lie that can and does make us prisoners, captured and held secure in our own broken, hollowed out souls. There are two kinds of lies: big lies with a capital L and little lies with a small l. The good news is that we can dissemble the big lies by first addressing the little lies that we all tell ourselves. It is the little lies that hollow us out and blind us to the big lie that is crushing us. Let's look at the big lie first. The big lie comes in three parts. The first part of the big lie is that America is a representative democracy. It is not. We are ruled by a corporate oligarchy that is exploiting us and becoming immensely rich and powerful off our backs. Over the past 40 years or so, this oligarchy has become enormously wealthy. And by the way, a footnote, I borrowed the term corporate oligarchy from several sources, including Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman and Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, Robert Reich. I am not sensationalizing. Further, there is considerable statistical evidence to back up the notion of a ruling corporate elite. Nico, please display the first graph. This graph, the result of a study by Princeton economists Gillens and Page, shows the effect the preferences of the wealthy elites have on public policy. As you can see, there is a direct correlation between wealth and influence on policy. Nico, please display the second graph. In this graph, we see the relationship between the preferences of the average citizen, you and me, on public policy. As you can see, there is no correlation. The conclusion Gillens and Page come to is in our third slide. Nico, please show that slide. The influence of most Americans on policy is statistically non-significant, nearly zero. The second part of the big lie is that America is an exceptional country populated by exceptional people. This is a falsehood that the oligarchy uses to keep us divided and in submission. By most metrics, America falls far short of being a great nation. We are, for instance, 27th in the world in terms of quality of healthcare, even though we spend far more per capita than other countries. We rank 25th in terms of education for our children. We rank 27th in IQ, our average being 98, while, for instance, Singapore's is 108. We rank second of the world's industrialized nation in terms of the highest number of children living in poverty. Romania is first. We rate 26th in terms of life expectancy. Our infant mortality rates are 50% higher on average than the world's other 35 most developed countries. I could go on, but it is very depressing. I will not, other than to say that while many Americans are living in what is for them functionally a third world country, we spend about as much per year as the entire rest of the world on defense. The third part of the big lie is the constant barrage of lies, deceit, and obfuscation that flow from our national government. This is very clear when we look at the current occupant of the White House, who half the nation sees as the devil incarnate and the other half sees as a second coming. Nico, please show the fourth slide. In this slide, we see the COVID-19 infection rate in the US versus, I've lost my place now. In this slide, we see the COVID infection rate in the US versus other industrialized countries. You can see that we far outpace other countries in infection rates. Interestingly, we are repeatedly told by the occupant of the White House that we are doing better than any other country at fighting COVID. You may think that all the above is a political problem. It is a political problem, but first, it is a spiritual problem. The reason we fall for the big lies of our politicians is because of the lies we tell ourselves. We will further explore this by journeying to ancient Egypt, where I believe we will find some hope. Thousands of years before Christianity, the ancient Egyptians knew of the lie and its destructive capacities. In Egyptian mythology, Set, that's S-E-T, Set, is the god of chaos, the lie, and darkness. Interestingly, Set is the brother of Osiris, a high Egyptian god. Osiris represents goodness, order, and abundance. Set and Osiris are locked in perpetual struggle. Osiris mostly has the upper hand, so goodness prevails, at least most of the time. Sometimes, however, Set wins. When he does, he cuts up Osiris' body and spreads the numerous pieces all over the world, while Osiris' spirit is consigned to the underworld. In other words, these are the times when everything goes to hell and chaos prevails. Fortunately, Osiris' son and Set's nephew, Horus, the keen-eyed god who represents consciousness, awareness, and paying attention, steps in to save the day. Horus, most often represented as a falcon or a falcon-headed man, goes on the hunt and finds Set. An epic battle ensues. Horus wins. Consciousness defeats the lie. Though defeated, Set escapes with one of Horus's eyes. Eventually, Horus is able to retrieve his eye and take it to Horus, who is then able to use it to ascend and create a new order. Osiris does this with a little help from Isis, who represents the feminine, and later goes on to have her own 1970s TV show. The moral of the story is, at least for us, is that if we are to confront the existing evil and create a new order both within ourselves and on the social level, we are going to have to keep our keen falcon eyes of consciousness on our own propensity towards deceit and love of evil, or more simply put, start telling the truth to ourselves and others. By way of footnote, the eye shown at the top of the pyramid on the back of the US dollar bill is the eye of providence, and it is a direct derivative of the keen eye of Horus. One keen-eyed Horus that we can learn from is the Reverend William Barber, who has taken up the mantle of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by reviving the Poor People's Campaign. We know that Reverend Barber is an incarnation of the Falcon God because he regularly received death threats from people of the lie, the hollowed out ones, those who have given themselves to hate and the dark god Set. You will observe in the video that Reverend Barber does not hesitate to call our treatment of the poor a moral issue. And Nico, if you would play that video, please.
Republicans tend to racialize poverty. Democrats tend to run for poverty. We must deal with the reality of poverty. We can talk about everything else, but we have to deal with the reality of poverty. And we not only want to debate, we have put forward a moral poverty justice budget. There's no scarcity of money. We know how to find the money. We know what happens if we invest in living wages and healthcare and education. And we know that we can challenge the fact that we spend 53 cents of every discretionary dollar on defense and less than 15 cents of every discretionary dollar on healthcare and education and things that would uplift society, which is why lastly, Amy, we are on a tour called the We Must Do More, mobilizing, organizing, registering, educating people for the movement to vote. And we're going to have on June 20th, 2020, a mass Poor People's Assembly and Moral March on Washington. Thousands of people are coming, poor and impacted people, moral leaders, right after the primaries, just before the convention, because we must change the moral narrative in this nation and deal with this issue that is affecting 43%, almost 50% of this nation's population. This is serious business. 30 million people without health care. We're talking about people who are dying because of government policies, not because God has called them home. And what we are saying is you can't just have a question about poverty or say you're going to address one area. You have to look at the interlocking injustices, systemic racism like voter suppression and mistreatment of immigrants, mistreatment of Native people, and systemic poverty and ecological devastation, the war economy and militarism, and this false moral narrative of religious nationalism that suggests that tries to moralize poverty and say, well, if people would just do better and live better, and churches and mosques and synagogues can take care of the issue. No, this is a American moral crisis. And so how is it that we are not discussing this issue and demanding that? We have put together, as I said, a budget. We've done an audit of America. We need a full conversation, not just one. We're saying we ought to have at least one. We're putting together an omnibus bill to put before the Congress. And last night, one of the reporters asked us, night before last, well, how long would it take to fix this? Well, it didn't take long to give $2 trillion of tax cuts to the wealthy. It doesn't take long for us to bail out companies where the leadership failed because of their own corruption. But when it comes to the poor, suddenly we want to slow down. On the other night, we had a white farmer from Kansas talks about how farmers are still having to purify their own water. We had a poor Navy veteran who's a trans sister now, Sophia, kicked out of the Navy, living in poverty. We had people who work for less than living wages who live in their cars and work every day. This is a travesty in America, and that's why we're not going to be silent anymore. That's why people are rising up.
Amen. Now, by now, you are probably sitting on the edge of your seat and asking yourself the question, how can I confront the powerful evil of these wicked systems that are destroying humanity and our planet? The first step is to realize that within you, you have a Set, a God of deception, darkness, and destruction. Admit to yourself that there is a part of you that enjoys cruelty, would, as the Old Testament prophet Amos said, sell a poor person into slavery to buy yourself a new pair of shoes, or as my grandmother used to say, have thoughts that would shame the devil. And you also have an Osiris in you, a God of order and goodness. You really do love the world, and even the people that don't like, you really do love the world, even the people that don't like you very much. And you really do want everyone to have plenty and live on a planet that is healthy. We need both gods to have a life worth living. It is in the struggle between these gods that our true creativity arises. We also have a keen-eyed Horus within. Horus, the falcon god, is, as I said earlier, the god of paying attention and consciousness. To stand on the side of morality and righteousness, one must keep one's Horus eye on the interplay between the two gods, Set and Osiris. If Set is ascendant in the struggle, we may give ourselves too easily to the lie and the harm of ourselves, others, and our planet. If Osiris is ascendant but not tended to by consciousness, we and our social orders may become stagnant, attempting to use yesterday's solutions to address today's problems. It is only in our personal struggle to live correctly that we can have the moral wherewithal to stand within our current system that has given itself too much to evil. Now here is some more hope, I hope. We can each of us let our falcons take wing, like a Dr. King, a Malala, or a Reverend Barber. We all have a Horus on which we can call. The gods, be they Greek, Egyptian, or Christian, are personifications of something that is already in you before you were born, maybe even in you before you were conceived. The falcon god soars the highest when we tell the truth to ourselves and others. When we tell the truth, we become whole human beings who have the courage to confront the lies of immoral systems. Right now, the big lie prevails. Set, the Lord of chaos and darkness, is in ascendancy. Osiris, god of order and abundance, is cut up and scattered in pieces. There's a virus loose that is killing us. Our two great political parties are in an acrimonious dogfight. Further, we are in very real danger of killing our planet. All the while, the rich grow richer and more powerful. However, am not afraid. Americans are really starting to pay attention. COVID-19, like Toto and the Wizard of Oz, has revealed that the man behind the curtain is just a man, and that the systems that consign many people to misery and a tiny portion to great wealth are human-made systems. And if they are human-made, we can change them for the better. The keen-eyed falcon god has awakened within us. He has taken wing in our hearts and minds. Horus is on the hunt. Perhaps you can feel in your own heart his sharp talons piercing the darkness. And now, let us meditate. And David.
We extinguish this flame, but keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again.